Welcome everyone to today's LinkedIn Live. I'm Bruce Eckfeld. I'm your host and moderator today. I'm going to introduce our topic and our guests in just a second. Our topic today, breaking the identity trap, reclaiming yourself beyond the CEO role. Interesting conversation. I think we're going to get some really interesting experience shares here, perspectives. I think this is something that a lot of founders and CEOs kind of struggle with, particularly when they're going through big transitions in their companies. So I'm excited to have this, excited to hear what people say, excited to really dig into this topic. I think it's an interesting one for us. Let me introduce our guests. First up, I've got Camille Preston. She is a business psychologist, leadership coach, founder of the AIM Leadership, and she specializes in helping leaders navigate complexity, transitions. She has a particular focus on identity, mindset, and adaptive performance. Perfect for this conversation today. Camille, welcome to the program.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Next up, I've got Debbie Millen. She is a seasoned COO. She's also a startup advisor. She's helped multiple companies scale through high growth phases. And she has a deep understanding of organizational strategy, team building, and she brings powerful insights in what it takes to lead and let go effectively. Debbie, welcome to the program.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise. So before we get into it, if you're watching here if you're on the...
Did we just lose our host?
I think we lost our host, and I think he was just helping people find there's a place to put comments in so that if you're inspired by the conversation or you came to the conversation with some specific questions, feel free to add those in. I'm sure he'll be joining us soon.
Rejoining momentarily.
Yeah. So Debbie, you've been through a lot of different transformations, identity transformations, and I'm curious, while we're waiting for Bruce to join, what are some of the themes that you see that founders navigate?
I was thinking about this as we were, preparing. I think the most successful CEOs and the most successful companies I've seen are where the CEO really surrounds themselves with people with complementary skills and lets them sort of, do the job and take on different responsibilities as the company's growing. We used to, at Globalization Partners, we had an article that we would give out to everybody called Giving Away Your Legos. So the concept being, when you're at a fast growth startup, you literally need to be giving away your responsibilities on a regular basis because new ones are coming in and the company's growing. And it really helps not only the company to scale, that is how companies can scale faster, but it also helps the CEO in terms of being able to continue to grow in their role as well.
Yeah. It's first of all, it's a brilliant concept from our conversations, and it's such a reminder. I'm left feeling like it not only sets the stage, but sets the culture for how we interact and how we engage, and it automatically disintermediates you from you are not your role. You are is right. That
you're leading the orchestra, as I like to say.
Yeah. It's interesting.
What are themes that you've seen? See the same question.
Yeah, so it's interesting, Bruce. We
started without you, Bruce.
No offense. I know this is your show, but we just jumped in. I was asking.
We started. Go ahead. You go ahead and answer, Camille.
So it's interesting because I see a lot of, whether it's people who are, selling their company, making a transformation, that often there's an unconscious commitment to their identity, and when their identity is attached to the role or the title or the business, it's while everything they've been working towards is selling the company, there's this, again, competing commitment underneath the surface. And so don't hold on to your Legos. Sharing your Legos is such an important kind of mindset to separate. And I think it's particularly salient now because so many people are having their Legos taken from them with AI and like changes that are happening in the workplace. And so for people who are listening, you can probably start to notice who on your team is holding onto Legos a little too tightly because of this uncertainty. Does that resonate for you, Bruce?
Yeah, it does. I think the one that I find interesting is, early stage of the company, you kind of have to have all that stuff integrated. Like it is kind of a cult of personality at some level. And so it's really this transition part. Like at what point, how do you kind of slowly disentangle as the company grows and it becomes bigger and it creates this kind of identity or this thing other than yourself? And I I find that people tend to hold on to too long, right? Like it's important in the beginning, and I think it drives a lot of the growth and a lot of kind of the early stage kind of culture of the company. But it's that transition, and particularly when you actually go to some kind of exit or transaction, that's obviously where it ruptures, more directly or more specifically. But I know actually, Debbie, we were talking a little bit about this in the beginning, where you had a kind of an earlier experience professionally that helped give you maybe a little
Yes.
head start on this. I'd love to hear a little
Yeah.
bit more about that.
Yes, I was saying earlier in my career, I worked at a telecommunications company, and I was there. It was early in my career. I had, my head down. I was working hard and long hours and worked my way into management. And that's actually my first exec suite was there too.
Uh-huh.
And the company I was there for 10 years. Company got bought, and I realized my entire work life was
Mhm.
in this one company. My whole network, my social, all of it.
Yeah.
And it was really I'm so glad that happened earlier in my career, because it really was a great wake up call that I really, I always use the hockey analogies, but it's like you need to pick your head up. You don't,
Mhm.
you need to look at where you're going and understand what's going on, not just in your company, which, I think particularly all of, type A crazy people like
Yeah.
myself, you put a lot of your effort into putting your head down and getting the job done. But really early, it helped me realize you can't just be your company and you can't just be your title. You need to be you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that's helped me along the way as I've gone into, different roles and have my own company. And I work with CEO founders and of,
Mhm.
growing technology companies. And I think that's help them navigate that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Camille, I'm curious. So, like, in the work that you've done with, founders, leaders, executives, like, where have you seen this kind of entanglement? Like, as you've seen them, kind of grow the company or kind of, get involved in this. Like, where does the actual entanglement come from? Like, where do you fuse the identity with the company?
That's a great question. So I see it with early stage founder leaders who are scaling, but I also do a lot of work with family businesses where
Yeah.
it's a similar dynamic. The challenge of family businesses is even when you choose to leave, sometimes you still have the family name and you're still in
Mhm.
that system, right? So there's layers of complexity. Um, I think the part that is really powerful is to start to separate your uh, as an early stage founder, it's
Uh-huh.
you're breathing, drinking, sleeping, eating, like dreaming, like everything is about the business.
Yeah.
And so to say diversify, build out your separation is is people can understand it cognitively. They don't know what it
Okay.
means.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's the same transformation that I'm seeing a lot of executives struggle with. And I do a lot with adult development theory. And so many leaders, founders, and leaders in their companies are in either the expert mindset, where it's like inch
Okay.
wide, mile deep. This is what I know. I'm the best in the world at
Yeah.
this. Or an achiever, which is someone who's like defined themselves by the results,
Mhm.
metrics that they deliver. To actually get to that next stage of development, you have to separate your identity from those concrete tangibles, and that's actually what's also happening with companies that are navigating AI automation.
Yeah.
It's separating and stepping away from this is who I am into like how do I hold the complexity? How do I question a lot of those assumptions? How do I hold where it might be white and black at the same time? And
Mhm.
it's I think that's really hard when you've had this focus, like scale, scale, scale,
Yeah.
scale.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's needed, right? Like, I think that serves them well. It's just at some point it becomes a liability. I'm curious, Debbie, what are some practical things like for you as you've seen kind of either your own experience or you've seen founders go through it? Like, is it like social connections? Is it having hobbies? Is it like what are the things that you actively do to kind of maintain a certain amount of differentiation between
Yes.
who I am
From
versus the business?
I think everyone is different, and I
Yeah.
think there's different ways for people to do it. But definitely having some sort of you need to have to your point, like from a social perspective, whether that's you have a family or
Yeah.
you're doing like you love to go on retreats for yoga or whatever the case may be. That there's something outside of work that you really enjoy and you are able to unplug,
Yeah.
truly unplug, which is really hard, particularly in that early
Uh-huh.
startup phase. Um, so I think it's a combination of knowing yourself, understanding that you need to sort of be getting out of the work mode, but then within, again, looking at it from an operational sort of scaling perspective. I do this thing where I've been doing it for my whole career, operationalizing your brain. Basically taking, what is it could be a process, it could be, a vision that you have, whatever it is. But usually it's like, what is this thing that you're doing that you need to be able to get out of your head and get onto paper so that other people can understand and help take that and grow it maybe in a different way than you can.
Yeah.
So I think it's some practical, hands-on things, but also just, getting up and going for a walk. One of my former CEOs that I worked with, we'd go for walk meetings to go, while we were walking.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's getting out of the office, that sort of thing. It varies.
One of the things I would often have CEOs that I was coaching do is get a co-working space, and have them spend at least a half a day a week, working on, it could be business related stuff, but working by themselves for at least half a day a week in a different environment, because it just starts to create another context, another space where they can think about doing work, so that it's just a slightly diversified and they have a little bit of distance from the day-to-day company environment.
Yes. And not answering emails during that time.
No, exactly.
And knowing, unplugged.
They were unplugged, or they could check their email, but they didn't have to respond. They wouldn't get their phone calls, things like that. Yeah. I'm curious, Camille, when you think about kind of the thinking side of this, I always like to kind of think about language and how people use language to kind of identify things, or like, I am a CEO versus, I operate as a CEO, right? Is this me, or is this the role and stuff? Like, what do you notice in terms of sort of the psychology side of this, in terms of how, either good patterns or good habits that you see leaders have that help them either maintain or create that separation, so that when they have to go through the transitions, it's less jarring, versus leaders that struggle with this more, that have, so tightly fused that when they do have to disentangle, it becomes more of a rupture for them. Anything you've noticed in kind of how they think?
Yeah. So you could put on like a really Jungian perspective and say, how do they develop their sense of self, who they are, how they engage, kind of how they're known out in the world, beyond their ego, beyond their identity, beyond their labels. And oftentimes that's, again, an intellectual process. It's hard to articulate. And I often encourage people to take a sizable break before they exit, right? So they actually practice unplugging. And the baking industry says you have to be gone for 2 weeks, off of email for 2 weeks for, malfeasance.
All the corporate risk side,
And it's actually something that's really, really helpful. I had someone I was with this morning who has teed up her resignation. So it'll happen at the end of August. And she's already in a hot panic as like someone who's lead this incredible team. And she's like trying to figure out how she's going to get the social connection and how she's going to see people. She doesn't really worry about missing the job. She worries about the relationships that she's forged. And so that's being able to develop your sense of self outside of it, your sense of identity. With when I do generational transitions in the workforce, it's both developing other things outside of the workplace, but it's also how do they feel fulfilled or complete, or like that self-efficacy, especially for those achiever mindsets. I've seen boomerangs so often when the retiring generation can't scratch that itch elsewhere.
So I will just jump on that and say, I've moved from being an operator in all of these technology companies to being into portfolio life, as I call it. So I do some consulting, I do some board work, I do some volunteer work. And part of what I have found is, I spent my whole career saying, I'm the vice president of this company, I'm the COO of this company. And now when people ask me what I do, I say, I scale technology companies. And it's a different way of thinking about it. And I think the sort of shift for me has helped. I think it's when you're building a company, and especially a startup, and growing it as much as I have in a couple of different companies, you're putting your whole self into that, and you really do become so part of it. And I still love all of that, but it's like having an adult child. It's basically, you have that same you have a relationship, but it's just slightly different. We were just talking about our kids before the call. And again, like it's always a part of you, but it's a different relationship, and how you view yourself is different as well.
Yeah.
And we're all on the East Coast. And so I also think about, I spent a lot of time in Utah. I love to ski. And other places where people don't start with their
Mhm.
professional affiliation. They don't start with their identity, or that doesn't come up. That's actually a really good way to incubate it because it starts to navigate. So earlier we talked about the power of peer group. You become
Yeah.
the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Like, think about who has made that transition well, nurture
Yeah.
those relationships, seek out those folks. And I was just talking with Joe Pine, who launched a book today on the transformation economy. And one of the things that really stood out for me was he talked about trauma, I would say adversity or complexity, that navigating hard things are an accelerant
Yeah.
to growth, but only if we have that container that can hold that complexity.
Yeah.
And so for people who are thinking about selling or thinking about exiting, it's strengthening your container so that when you hit complexity, you have alternatives internally with, and
Mhm.
again, the mindset, we've been so focused externally and scaling the company that it's time to turn the mirror
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah, it's interesting. One thing that I found in my journey, and I kind of got into CEO role kind of sideways. I was an architect and got into technology, and then founded this company. And so, like for me, it wasn't like this was this lifelong ambition, and I had always wanted to be a CEO. And what I found it uncomfortable when friends and family would introduce me to other people as a CEO.
Hmm.
And for me, I realized that, well, it was like, yes, I had to kind of manage my own kind of attachment or kind of like how my identity was tied into this role, but how other people's vision of me was tied into this role. And
Mm,
when I sold, a lot of the challenge was actually how other people process this and how other people like, well, what are you now? And
right.
like I was probably more comfortable with like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm doing my own thing. Right.
Mhm.
I think they were a little more confused, or I had to help them navigate some of this stuff.
Right.
I'm curious
Yeah.
and Debbie, I'm curious in your experience,
I'm
like
seeing
how
the same. Yes.
yeah, how
And
did you
I've experienced the same thing too. Yes, because I think people see you associated, like when I've left a couple of companies that I was at for a very long time, people are
yeah,
like, what do you mean you're not there?
yeah,
That, like, that's who you are.
yeah,
Or I equate it to, like just a completely different example. Like, when you see your elementary school teacher at the grocery store and you're like, wait, you're not in the school? Like, no, no, you're in the school. My parents were both teachers. So
yeah, yeah,
but right, because they have this image of you, and you're in that work part of their world, and when
uh-huh,
you're then trying to go outside of it, sometimes they need to adjust more than you do. To your point, Bruce.
yeah, yeah. Camille, where have you seen this kind of the external relationships, the
Mhm.
transition that happens there for folks?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm listening to the conversation, and I had a client who basically rebranded me from an executive coach to a business psychologist about 10
Yeah,
years ago. She's like, "You're so much more than a coach. You're a
yeah,
business psychologist."
Mhm.
And then after that, my husband used to laugh. He's such a people watcher, but you're in a social setting, you say a business psychologist, and some people are like moth to a flame. They have like 15,000 questions, and they're like,
What does that mean? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They're like, let me tell you about my blah, 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 blah. And then you see other people who like bolt the other direction. So
Mhm.
uh-huh,
it's kind of funny to see how that identity, are the labels that we have around ourselves,
yeah,
carry so much. Um, and and so, I mean, we could take this question two different ways.
mhm,
One is, how do people experience you and your identity? The other is like, how do you transform kind of where you want to be?
mhm,
And for people who are listening, who are thinking about it, I often think about, what are the words you want people to use to
mhm,
describe you? Not like, think about the competencies or the characters, those the ways how you want to be perceived in the world, and then start using those. Because
yeah,
then you're almost projecting that image out into the world, but then back to yourself. So you start to live into those areas. And so for some people, that might be really scary because it's like, I've only ever been
yeah.
X,
Right.
but it creates this huge opportunity of opening.
Yeah, I'm just getting reminded of James Clear with Atomic Habits,
Yeah.
and one of the things, if I remember rightly, it's been a while since I read the book, but if I remember rightly, he had one of his ideas, or he starts the book with, it's less about kind of figuring out the habits,
Mhm.
it's more about figuring out who do you want to become,
Mhm.
and the more that you can really identify, envision, articulate who that new person is, like what is this new person that you want to become, and then figure out, okay, well, what are the habits of this new person? it does two things. One, it helps you figure out the habits that are actually going to be meaningful. But the other thing is, like, the more that you can, reprogram that identity, these habits are now something you kind of have to do to be that identity, and less about changing yourself. So I'm not articulating that very well, I think, but
it's spot on. It's spot on. And like, to broaden beyond people who are thinking about sailing their company.
Yeah.
Everyone is navigating this massive shift.
Yeah.
Like, nationally, we're seeing our identity shift. We're seeing it in the workplace. We're seeing it everywhere. And so there's a natural contraction or a holding on, or like a fear-based.
Yeah.
We often go into that.
Oh, the Legos? Yes.
My Legos.
Yeah.
The alternative is to say, is to, one way you can reduce that tension or reduce that uncertainty is to be stepping forward into who you want to be. So for anyone who's feeling that tension, it's a huge opportunity. Debbie, you're seeing this a lot.
Yeah. Yes, I do. And I like that you sort of are expanding this. It's not just the CEO. Like, we all go through this at different parts in our lives, different parts in our career. And one of the things that when I'm working with CEOs a lot now is, I spent a lot of my life building my life around work. And I think it's good to build work around your life. What do you want your life to be?
Yeah.
And, getting to the point of what you guys are talking about, and sort of, how does work fit into that? That can be easier said than done. I understand this, especially if it's, to your point, Bruce, if it's someone who's like had this idea and dream and vision, and they wanted to go build this company, you put a lot of your heart and soul into that, and work is important. But it's also making sure that you sort of are building the life that you want, and work and being a CEO is part of that, and it can evolve over time, and it should.
Yeah. How, I've certainly found, I personally, and with a lot of people that I've worked with around this, is this idea of making it reasonably specific, right? So when you think about, okay, where do I want to be in 3 years, 5 years? What's this new version of me? Like, you can kind of come up with this general description of like, oh, well, I want to be focused on these things. What I love doing with leaders is like walk me through a week, right? Start me on Monday and go through the week and the following weekend, and tell me what does your world look like? When do you wake up? Who do you talk to? What do you eat for breakfast? What kind of meetings do you have? Like, do you work out? How do you work? Like making them think really specifically on a day-to-day level, and actually envision that, I find is a key part of being able to do that process. Because if it's too abstract, like, it doesn't create that pull. It doesn't create that, the reality. I really do want that, right? And now once they envision that week, they're like, ooh, I can't un-envision that. And now I kind of need to do it, because if I don't do it, that's, so there's something specific. I'm curious, how is the specificity, or how do you help people really articulate the vision and create something that actually helps move them forward?
So I love playing with AI. Have you guys done this thing with AI where it's like you get a day, your future self, like day in your future? It's basically what you're talking about, Bruce. So you do this thing where you put in all the things that kind of you want, and it walks you through the day. And I've done it a couple of times. It's fun. It's a fun thing to do. But to your point, it's an exercise in sort of helping to see a reality that you want to get to. The beautiful thing is that I was very close to perfect day. I was like, this is pretty good. I'm not so bad.
Love that.
Right? I was like, I felt pretty good about it. Well, because I've spent the last few years designing my life, right? So, and I've been able to do that. And I realize how lucky I am. But, I think you're spot on, Bruce, in the fact that you need to be able to have people actually, you don't need to have 8,000 goals. That's actually going to be detrimental. What you want to do, I love to sort of do the, like, what do you want your life to be? How do you want to be involved in the company? Because some people want to have it and grow it and that's where they're going to retire from, and that's great. And some people want to sell, and some people want to they're serial entrepreneurs. So really understanding how the work part fits into that future self is I think a key part.
Yeah.
We often do 1 year and 3 years, and then we do personal, professional, and for your organization, and get people really clear, like, what does that look like, and write it as if it's done. Yeah. And invariably they get to 3 years and they're like, WTF, I don't want to wait 3 years for that. Yeah. And so that becomes the 1 year, and then they navigate. It also unlocks all these assumptions. And in my most recent book, we talk a lot about these assumptions that we have bought into and taken as facts. Yeah. And it challenges them. And so examples of it are like, wait a minute, my kids are launched. Where do I want to live? I know that
Mhm.
resonates for you, Debbie. And
It
then
does.
like all of a sudden, once you get clear, then you can have a very different conversation about, okay, what are the levers you need to pull?
Yeah.
Who do you need to become? Like, what are the things that have to shift on the inside and the outside? But we don't learn. I always joke that I think it was 26 years of formal education and 45 minutes on how to have a great life, right? Like we don't give people these skills. And that's as a psychologist. I'm sure engineers have much less.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. If anything. Yeah, I love that that idea of acceleration. Like we do this on the business side too. Like we'll do a 5-year plan, and then we'll say, okay, what would it take to do it in 3 years? What would it take to do it in 1 year? What would it take to do it in 90 days? And I love that because it does force you to identify those limiting kind of assumptions that you've made about, okay, well, we have to incrementally grow, and like, okay, well, if we can only do 5% per quarter on growth, like that only gets us so far. And then all of a sudden, well, if we had to do it in 90 days, we'd have to acquire something, or we'd have to like, go after
Right.
just different accounts or like, and now you're really talking about substantial change in the organization rather than just this, okay, we're going to improve, improving 1% a day is great. Like we need that continuous improvement. But sometimes we need to just kind of tear things down and think about a whole different way of how to achieve these things, and being specific and really articulate around what that future holds, and then figure out how to move that forward can really powerful there.
Yeah. I
And
think go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say you have to be willing to feel the pain of like, where is that pressure coming?
Yeah.
And some organizations that feel that tension, like healthcare, I'm doing a lot with healthcare right now
Yeah.
because they feel that pain coming really quick. And that can drive change. I think when people aren't willing to consider kind of the worst case kind of pressures, they have a hard time. Debbie, go ahead.
I was going to say, sort of building on all of that, I think that clarity also gives people, what's the real priorities? Because if you're trying to do too many things, you're not going to do any of them well, particularly in a startup kind of an environment. So I think it also gives the clarity from the company perspective of, okay, what really is the most important thing? What's going to get us moving the furthest? Where's the biggest return for us, in terms of where we're going to spend our time and our money. So I think it helps from the organizational side and the scaling side as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say we can climb any mountain you want, just not every mountain. Right.
Pick a mountain.
If half the team's trying to climb one mountain, the other half is trying to climb another mountain, we are going to have a horrible time here because and sometimes it's just picking, right? There's lots of great ones. Like, it's not like we don't even need the perfect one. We just need a really good one, but we got to pick. All right. And not picking is the worst outcome on those kind of situations. I'm curious, Camille, you mentioned this idea of discomfort and pain. Is that sort of necessary at some level? Or I'm kind of curious, like how does that discomfort help actually drive some of that change? Because I certainly have seen lots of situations where people are comfortable, right? And it's really hard to drive significant change in a situation where it's like, this ain't so bad. Do we want to risk it? But, but sometimes you need it. Like how do you see kind of the importance or the tool and the necessity of discomfort in that change process?
That's a great question. So I believe tension creates consciousness. It's a very abstract phase, but if you can hold the tension of like, who might disrupt your business, like where are the pressures coming, and you can hold all of that, which is like people might not like your baby, right? That type of like reflection, all of a sudden you can open into new ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a masochist, but I do think that we put our head in the sand a lot of time, and we resist kind of those hard conversations. So I actually believe discomfort is almost existential for your capacity to grow as a leader and your capacity to hold complexity. So I don't wish adversity on anyone, but anyone who's gone through hard times has clearly identified that as a life-changing or character-defining moment. So I guess the thing I would say to people listening is, if you're feeling adversity, there's one thing to celebrate. You have the potential to grow. It's a catalyst.
Yeah, very much so. I wrote a blog a long time ago, an article called, Getting Through Death Valley. Like people don't necessarily talk about the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And I think every startup, any company has gone through a time where you're like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if we're going to make it, like, whatever the case may be. And I think the ones that make it through are the ones who are very clear on what the priorities are. And they've built that foundation that it's more, the company is more than just the CEO.
Yeah.
Would you say they're living real too, Debbie?
They are living real. What a great segue.
The plug, I love it. I love it.
The book is written about grief, but it's really about transformation.
Yeah.
What I've come to realize about 4 months after it was published, that it really is a manifesto for how to navigate.
Yeah.
But as a classic example, I had 5 deaths in 5 months. Like you can't really pull yourself up from your bootstraps and move on from that. You have to kind of re-examine. So if you are in that place of re-examining, like there's so much goodness that can come out of that.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need a thought partner who can help you navigate kind of death. What do you call it? Death Valley or?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I certainly find sometimes, learning how to pick up the pieces thoughtfully and strategically is one of the best sort of muscles to be able to build, because you learn, right? That's where you learn these things. We're going to hit time here. This has been a pleasure. I want to make sure people have contact information. Camille, if people want to find out more about you, the work, the book, what's the best way to get that?
Sure. My company is AIM Leadership, Awaken Inner Mastery. So aimleadership.com, and you can just email me, Camille at AIM Leadership, or find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And Debbie, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Definitely LinkedIn. And you can also visit debbiemillen.com, which has a little bit of everything about me.
Excellent. And if people want to get a hold of me, just bruce@eckfeldt.com is email, eckfeldt.com URL, and then obviously LinkedIn. Camille, Debbie, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Thanks for everyone for listening. Again, if you're watching the replay, leave comments and questions on the pages there. We'll get to those in the next couple of days and weeks, and we'll follow that. And thank you all for joining. We'll see you at the next LinkedIn Live. Take care, everyone.